No, don't worry about the sheets. Forget about the sheets. What a waste of energy. Don't worry about the sheets. What needs to happen tonight? That's the question.
What do you want to make happen?
I didn't, no, don't throw it back on me. That's an abdication. I'm throwing it to you. What do you want?
I want the wisest thoughts that you come up with.
Oh, goodness. I'm not interested in being wise. I'm not interested. I don't want to be a wise guy. I want to be a spiritual gangster. That's what I want to be. That's what I want to be. I want to be a spiritual gangster. That's me. That's what I want to be. I want to roam the streets for God. And how crazy a world is it, huh? It's such a crazy world. All of my filter, you see, says in the Gemara. Although I see a crazy world.
But I want to suggest something about what we talked about. Would be continue what we just were talking about in terms of how do we heal the Jacob and Esau in ourselves? You know, how do we bring that together and work on that for the sake of
Well, first you'd have to tell me where you know, how you know you have a Jacob and Esau in yourself.
That's what I was figuring out when we were talking about it. It's like, oh, we're all born with God. Part of us is that we just kind of always get away from it.
Yeah.
Just being who we are. And, you know, we both have it inside ourselves, and then if we look toward it, it welcomes us beautifully, and then we say, I'll be back, we really don't want to go there anymore. So it seems like the whole story could be related to what we're all dealing with in some way. So, how do we make better friends with the shadow so that we can help this world we're in? Because that's what it seems to me you were saying.
I mean, I don't know necessarily that every conflict can be reduced to the not just the abstraction, that every conflict is reducible to some projected other necessarily. Meaning that if you haven't worked through your other, your inner other, then you project it on the outside other. I think that that's, you know, I think that that's part of a very complex matrix of a nexus of causes and effects. And I think that we are, again, I want to say this to my students so you don't, it's really important to me that I'm not teaching you something that I don't believe in. Or let me say it differently, that you're not walking away with something that I didn't say. Or you're inferring from what I didn't say what I didn't say. Meaning, it's not all about the inside. And it's not all about the outside. It's not either or. It's not the whole world is narcissistically held by a thread that I happen to be, you know, my own intention holds one end and the world is on the other end. And if I have the right intention, the whole world will just bend towards my narcissistic will. That's the secret. Anybody know the book The Secret or the phenomenon The Secret? Yeah. Let me tell you something. It's not a secret. It's stupid. One piece of it is true. One small piece of it is true. And a whole big piece of it isn't true. The piece of it that's true is that how you think, that's your life. Right? But not how you think that's your financial life. Meaning, if you write a check for $1 million and put it into your pocket and then only have good thoughts, the law of attraction will you know, manifest for you your intention. That's a kind of philosophy that has the kind of developmental maturity of a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old. That hasn't yet fully understood that the outside and the inside are not actually, you know, step on a crack and break my brother's back. Right? There are religious doctrines that say that if you have sexual thoughts, you know, there are tsunamis that are happening because of your licentiousness, you know. Man, I'm telling you, I know a whole group of kids from high school that probably caused a couple thousand tsunamis. But it ain't true. It ain't true. Meaning, the doctrine of the inner contemplative life and the relationship between thoughts, feelings, and actions it's obvious. It's common sense. You don't need Freud to come along and teach us that our thoughts are powerful and that our thoughts are so much of our world is governed by the thought patterns that we have. We certainly know now that it's much more complex than that because there are more primal levels where thought is not actually yet emergent feeling tones in the body that themselves are even more embedded than thought are. But be that as it may, The Secret was a phenomenon in America, right? I mean, The Secret is everywhere. Because it landed in a world of narcissistic, self-indulgent spirituality where someone says to you, hey, what you think will determine your world. And you say, really? That's great. Sure. It just confirms that the whole world revolves around me. My whole world, certainly, and the outside world too. It also feeds into a kind of victim grandiosity. It's the same thing. I'm either the victim or I'm either God or I'm the devil. Right? I either can make the world what it is or I'm responsible for the world. It's like overly indulgent, too much power. So there's certainly truth to that inner domain, but there's also a fuller gestalt that needs to be involved. So is it true that there's an inner Jacob? Yes. Is it true that there's an inner Esau? I mean, certainly those archetypes are there. There's also how it played out in history, and there's all kinds of, the complexity of the situation is very powerful. Very powerful. And it's really important for us to not lose sight, right, of the complexity of the situation, not give in to overly simplistic, aphorisms about anything. But what do we want to talk about Yaakov and Esau? Do people want to talk about Jacob and Esau instead of talking about Bina? Because I also want to talk about Bina, because that was the next of the Sfirot that we did. We did Keter, remember, the forehead and the meditation around the forehead and humility, and Keter is always receiving. Remember, Keter is looking up and looking down simultaneously. I'm sorry, Keter is always looking down, excuse me. Chochmah was the next one, looking up and looking down. And you guys know you're really listening, it's great. And that the meditation on humility and seeing the divine in the other. How many people have been practicing any of these things? How many people just remember in the middle of the day like, oh, I'm going to try to love this person who's standing in front of me because they're in the image of God. People are, wow, that's great. I'm doing it too. I just want to say I'm with you. My own practices too. Remember a couple of times today to relax my forehead when I wasn't relaxed. So I do want to talk about Bina, which is the next of the Sfirot. How do you Bina? What's the Bina thing? How do you Bina? What is Bina? How do you do it? But I'm happy to talk about Jacob and Esau too, or anything else. No. So that was one thing from Alina. Anybody else have something else that they want to talk about? David Barry.
I'll tell you what I'm wrestling with. I'm wrestling with the guilt, how Jacob, in quote, stole the blessings from Esau, and that may be what's causing all the craziness in the world today. If Esau represents not just Rome, but Islam, some rabbis have been expanding into that, then they're resentful for everything that we have because it's really theirs. And I'm wrestling with that. In the Bible itself, it's clear. And okay, dressed up like him, and we all know he was supposed to take it, but I'm wrestling with him.
Yeah. So these stories are very powerful. Very powerful stories. The Bible is written by Israelites, by Jews. It's our stories. These are our sacred narratives, our sacred stories. It's clearly important to those who wrote the Bible for us to see Jacob as someone who has an arc in his personality, a character development. Right? In the Bible itself, even if you're reading the Bible from the perspective of the Jewish people, you can't feel overly sympathetic to Jacob's character in the beginning of the story. Right? Jacob is, he doesn't come off well in a certain way. By the same token, Esau is certainly not a biblical figure that was, if you look at the full picture of the Bible, Esau as a hunter. Hunters in the Bible are not role models. Right? To be a hunter in the Bible and to be described as a hunter in that archetype, in that story, is to tell a story about a relationship between the culture that Israelites were trying to valorize and a culture that Israelites were trying to some way to distance themselves from. And Esau becomes like whether he lived or not, I'm assuming this is a myth. I'm assuming that there wasn't an Esau or Jacob. But that these are the stories that the Israelites are telling about their ancestors in a way to describe a kind of political reality and various relationships that were taking place at the time of the writing of the Bible. Edom was over there, and right, so they had relationships with other nations, what we're called nations, other kingdoms. And they're trying to describe an essential difference between who we are and our narrative and who you are. And for the Israelites, Jacob is first described as a very cunning, deceiving individual, but in some way also that's his strength. Right? He knows how to take what really belongs to him, even if somebody else seems to have it. And he's described as an Ish Tam Yoshev Alim, as a simple guy who's in tents, who lives in a tent. Good things happen in tents in the Bible. And the fact that he's considered a simple, an Ish Tam is the description, he's a simple person, and he dwells in tents. It's clear that the story is about Jacob's development from a tent dweller to someone who can live in a frontal relationship with reality. That's the drama, right? So he steals the birthright. It's not really true. It's sold to him. Right? He takes advantage of his brother being hungry and he sells him the birthright. Then he steals the blessings. Now, let's grant for a moment that it's hard to imagine looking at world history and the relationship between the Jews and Christians and Islam as being rooted in this moment for a number of reasons. One is Arabs and Muslims don't identify themselves with the character of Esau. Even if the rabbis schlep a whole slew of hated others into the Esau category, it's not clear that it's pretty clear actually that they never saw themselves in that way. Number one. Number two is especially for Christians and for Muslims, they venerate the stories of the Bible as God, as also divinely inspired, so they think that it was appropriate. In other words, Jacob and Rebecca had a prophecy, right? There was a prophecy that was given at the beginning of the parsha this week. Rebecca is told one of them will be greater than the other, and she chose which one was going to be greater than the other. And so Rebecca just acted out of that divinely inspired moment where she got clear message. But I think what's deeper here is, I think that the deeper structure here for me is that when religious mythology is seen as absolutely true, right? When people think that the stories in the Bible are absolutely true, that's the beginning of a big mess. Period. When we look to the Bible to be absolutely true or empirically true or to be telling us history, right? And we actually say, well, it says it in the Bible, therefore. When we approach religious texts, the way that we approach scientific texts or mathematical textbooks, and we assume that there's a direct correlation between the story in the Bible or what the rabbi said and how it is in reality, without any critical analysis whatsoever, that's a whole big mess. It's a big mess. When we abdicate our critical faculties, if people, let's just give a context here. Okay, let's give a context. Let's say the Jews win. Let's say Meir Kahana, the racist rabbi, who was an advocate for free, of exchanging all the Arabs in Israel and sending them off to Jordan or some other place, all the Palestinians, claimed that they weren't even Palestinians, no such nation existed, whatever it was. Let's say that the entire land of Israel, which is the size of like a thumbtack, right? It's not even big, it's like smaller than New Jersey. Let's say, it's much smaller. Let's say it belonged only to the Jews. Like, who would be happy then? Like, meaning, if you ask me, as someone who doesn't believe in the literal understanding of the Bible, like, I get our connection with that piece of land. I get the history. I get the power of it, and the power of what it means to me as a Jew, and to my family, and to Jewish history, and to the thousands of years, and the millions of people who yearn to live in that land. But let's say it was, free of anyone who would pose a threat. It's like, most Jews in Israel are secular. Most Jews have a connection to the land that isn't rooted in the sense of the sacred nature of the land itself, right? So, there's a religious war, but it's a strange religious war for someone who is, like me, religious, but who doesn't believe in the literal meaning of the Bible. I do believe that God is fully present everywhere. Fully present here in this church as God is outside of this church. So I would be happy to see a land where there are no terrorist attacks, but I don't pray the same way that my ultra-Orthodox brothers and sisters pray when they say the holiness of the land. I don't have the same relationship with it. Like, if you ask me if it's even if one life will be saved by giving up 10 miles of Israel, I would give it up in a heartbeat. I don't have what they have. I don't even have what some of my friends who over the summer were going to places in Yehuda, what's called Judah and Samaria, or Yehuda and Shomron, in various parts of the land, and they can feel the prophets used to walk there, and I feel that too. But then if you ask me, can I live a life knowing that a group of religious Muslims live on that part of the land, if it saves human life? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the highest value to me is human life. So so much of the religious war around this is essentially coming from a structure, a value structure that still sees these myths as absolutely operative in the world on a real basis. The Jews are the enemy, or that Arabs are the enemy, the Muslims are the enemy for their religious doctrine. And I'm not saying that's the fullness of the picture. Again, I said before, it's extremely complex, and there are historical contingencies, right? We need the land of Israel for historical contingencies, not just for religious reasons. We weren't safe even 60 years ago, and we're still not safe completely in places like Paris and other places around the world. So I'm not saying that it isn't a very complex issue, but when you ask me, David Barrett asked me a question rooted in the myth of the Bible, asked me, is it possible that original myth is responsible for everything that's in some way happening between Jews and the rest of the world? I say, well, only between a certain center of gravity that takes those stories as mythically empowering. Like, I'll tell you, here's a moment for me. Like, I'm reading a letter today. I was crying all day. And I get a letter that a friend of mine sends me a letter, forwards me a letter from a very well-known scholar. She's a Rebbitzin. She's an ultra-Orthodox woman who's a brilliant, brilliant Torah teacher. She lives in Har Nof. She lives in the neighborhood where the attacks took place. And she writes a beautifully poignant, heartbreaking email about, she's related to one of the rabbis that was killed. He's the son-in-law of a friend, and so she's telling me she's telling in the letter all of the different things that happened that were incredible in terms of how people touched each other and held each other and were with each other and the courage and all these wonderful things. And at the end of the email she writes to her constituency, just thank God we are not them, with capital T-H-E-M, and that we have the Torah, and we have the Torah, and we have Hashem, and thank God for that. And she had me until that moment. Right? She had me until that moment because, I'm just not there. I'm just not, I'm not there, because to me, I acknowledge that there are certainly very significant cultural differences between various, there are significant cultural differences. Right? I don't think it's true that, I'm not going to go into it, because I don't want to go down this road. I'm just saying, I think there are very significant cultural differences, but I'm not, I don't see that the differences are rooted in an us and them. I think it's rooted in something much more complex. I don't think it's innate. They are this way and we are this way. Because there are plenty of them that I know that I love, and there are plenty of us that I know, and frankly, I'm a little bit scared of. It's a lot of them and us. So I think that obviously, and again, it's someone to be forgiven for saying that a day after seeing what she saw. Absolutely. Right. For someone to be that enraged, and for someone to send that out into the world, you know, I know that she's not, I know that email is not, I happen to know that's not inciting, right? It's not an insightful email, it's CITE. But like, again, it's not useful to me. What's useful to me is, as Alina said, there's Jacob and there's Esau. There's Ishmael and there's Yitzchak. There are stories of those who want to make a claim on being the son that inherited the father's love and the mother's love. And there have been wars about which son is more beloved, which son is more right, which son has the truth. And certainly, I don't know that that's what happened yesterday at all. I think yesterday was just yesterday was another unbelievable and unspeakable evil decision, an evil, a moment of deep ignorance and deep confusion. So I don't want to root it in that myth, David. So that's that, yeah. Lauren?
Something that is so heartbreaking to me today in the world, but also when you go back and read these stories in Genesis, is the way in which we raise our children. You know, not only my children, your children, but, you know, our children. And where are the parents? And this idea that Rebecca listened to God and had to fulfill this divine process, this divine promise that she chose to do so. And I, you know, that to me isn't at all clear when I read the text. You know, what she was doing, because I think she's so absent from the story, that we don't hear the nitty-gritty of the child rearing and what the mothers and fathers are doing and telling their kids. But to this day, it seems to go, be self-perpetuated. The ideas of hatred, the ideas of not being able to get along with one's sibling. And do the rabbis of in Kabbalah have they address this at all?
You know, in the Kabbalah, Jacob is seen on the side of what's called the side of Kedusha. Jacob is the middle pillar of the three. Right? We didn't get to Jacob yet. We did Chesed we did Chochmah rather, and tonight we're doing Bina. But Jacob is in the Kabbalistic schema. Jacob is the central pillar who unifies his grandfather Abraham's energies with his father Isaac's energies, and Jacob becomes the center pillar. Meaning Jacob becomes the embodiment of Tiferet. He becomes the embodiment of Kudsha B'richu, the Holy One. Jacob is what's called he has the full array. He's gone through the full cycle, and he brings everything, and he in merits being named, we're named after Jacob, essentially. We're named after Israel. And so Jacob becomes the paragon of wholeness because he comes from a place of being Yaakov, but then he has a name change and he's wrestling with the angel, and he becomes the Merkavai, becomes like the structure on which everything flows forth. He is the one who helps balance the two extremes of Chesed on the one hand and Din or Gevur of Isaac on the other. So Jacob we all want to deal with Jacob. There's a Jacob in Kabbalah that is that is a model of that we are seeking to embody and to imitate, right? The one who learns to be yashar, to be straight, not to be Yaakov, which means to be crooked. Of course, Jacob himself doesn't have the fullness of Jacob's bed, as it were, the fullness of Jacob's life, that he finished his life with no unfinished business, is because of the work that Judah and Joseph do together. So Judah and Joseph become, right, the way that Jacob becomes complete. That's why at the end of his life, he's able to bless his children in a way that, by the way, Abraham doesn't bless his children. And Isaac blesses them in a crooked way.
In Isaac, I think you've spoken of that whole idea that Isaac is fully complicit in this being of Jacob's. That he very well might not knows who his sons are, and yet he willfully is deceived.
Yeah.
If we could, again, let's first stop for a second and say that let's be clear on when we've moved from one country to another in terms of our paradigms. So one thing is for sure, that anachronistically trying to read the Bible for psychodynamic and other deeper dimensions is our prerogative, but let's just be aware that we're not reading it in its own context. Right? It's hard to imagine that the biblical author is using the frames that we're allowed ourselves to use in the 20th and 21st century, which is okay. Just want to say that the first thing. Second thing is, so then your question about Rebecca's parenting style, which is a legitimate question, right? The text is very sparse about how Rebecca and Isaac parented their children. But one thing we know is that Isaac is someone who is loved by his father, but his father uses him in a way to prove his fealty to God. And then Isaac loves Rebecca because Rebecca replaces Isaac's mother, Sarah. And then we know that Isaac loves Esau because Esau gives him food to eat. There's something about Esau's character that is very attractive to Isaac. Right? Isaac sees in Esau a bit of the other, like the one that I wasn't, right? That and maybe even a replacement of his brother Ishmael in some ways, the missing brother that unfortunately I didn't spend as much time as I would have wanted to, and Esau has that quality, and Esau knows how, like Esau as the elder son really knows how to make his dad love him. He charms him. He does what Isaac needs him to do. And the Jacob character in the Rebecca, at least the way that Rebecca sees Jacob as the one who has the inner intelligence or the inner place of Isaac. Right? Like that he would be the one who most deeply identifies with Isaac's soul. So you can say what you want about Rebecca. It's not clear from the text why she doesn't like Esau. But she loves Jacob. Right? She loves Jacob. Now if you want to, I'm not sure where you want to go with that here in terms of, our modern stories. But the beauty of the Jacob and Esau narrative and the Isaac and Rebecca narrative is, and I hope everybody's not falling asleep yet. The beauty of this myth is that it speaks to the blindness that parents have vis-a-vis their children. It speaks to the deep yearning that children have to be seen by their parents. And of course, Isaac is blind. I mean, you can't get better than that. That Isaac is completely blind. And it also speaks to the way that the false self emerges in yearning to placate or to appease the parent. Right? The fact that Jacob has to wear his brother's clothing to be able to receive a blessing. is nothing, I think, more poignant than that he has to wear his brother's clothing in order for his father to touch him. If you look in the text this week, look how many times there's a yearning for touching to take place. And how often and how the blessing is conveyed through touching. As if you can imagine each child say, just touch me, Dad, right? I was reading this week, you guys know that I'm on this Bruce Springsteen thing for the last couple of years. I've been like fixated on him, obsessed with him. And I read, David Remnick wrote like a ridiculously long article about Bruce Springsteen for the New Yorker in 2012. So I was up one night reading it, it's like, I don't know how long it was too long, but it was great. And in it, he quotes Springsteen saying that, in the name of somebody else that I should know, but I don't know, he said that all rock and roll is just one long screaming daddy. Just like the whole thing, just one long screaming daddy, you know? And how Bruce was talking about his own dad, you know, and how his dad completely didn't get him at all. So, I mean, the pathos of that story, of that triangle, the two triangles, the one between Rebekah, Esau, and Jacob, and the one between Isaac, Esau, and Jacob, and then between, of course, right, the two parents who are obviously not communicating with each other either, is like the struggle when you have twins. And I mean, the story is just so perfectly balanced. You have these two twins, and they're so radically different. But in order for them to receive the blessing, they're fighting over the blessing. And it's a funny thing for us. I think coming back to David Barrett's question, it's a funny thing for us who are not taking the myth literally to see children fighting for an infinite blessing, from an infinite blesser. Like, you know, if God is this infinite being, like the gerrymandering around the fighting over who's going to get the infinite being's blessing is like a ridiculously silly fight. Like, you know, as if. It's like the vision of religious triumphalism is such an affront to the belief in an infinite God. Like the vision of a religious triumphalist, right? That Judaism will one day be shown to be true, or that Islam will be true, or that the great Hindu, you know, it's like, really? Is that really? That's your God? Your God, you know, the best that your God could do is create a scenario where only one kid gets the candy, and the other kid has to just go home and cry because they didn't get the candy? That's your vision? So it's like, you know, obviously, you know, I just have to say over and over again when these things happen that there is no justification for violence. But stories that are rooted in this kind of thinking are almost setting up the world to be on fire. It's like, and I say to people sometimes, I'm sorry, Ava, I want to get you a question, but like, I sometimes say to people when I sit with them, you know, I'm not always in this kind of polemical mood. You know, so I don't always get into these conversations, but sometimes I'll be sitting with someone and say, so let me get this straight. Like, I did this last year. I went to hear, you guys all know that on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur we were at a church on 83rd Street, right? So many of you were there. So I had never been there before, so 2 years ago I went to hear a preacher talk. I wanted to go to a service and see what it was like at that church, so I went. And it was great. The music was amazing. The people were young, and it was, you know, there was a lot of vitality. And it was great. And the preacher got up to speak, and he was like an Asian American guy, extremely articulate, spoke for 25, 30 minutes about death, and I thought it was great. I thought that could have been a great Kol Nidre sermon. It was great. I went over to him afterwards, and it was like, we were standing like this far apart. It was Abraham Cho, great guy. And I started talking to him, and I said to him, like, you know, right on, man, who are you reading? We were just sharing notes, and I told him where I was. And then at the end of it, I just couldn't get over how much of a soul brother he felt like to me. And I said to him, but I heard you guys are evangelical Presbyterians. So do you believe that I'm going to hell? Because right now I'm feeling like we're in heaven right now. I'm just talking to you. We're just shooting it, and I'm quoting, you know, Thomas Merton, and you're quoting Rabbi Heschel, and we're just ticking on. We have the same bookshelf. It's all great. I said, but do you really think because I haven't accepted Jesus that I'm going to go to hell? And he's like looking at me, he's like, what am I gonna say? He's like, I'm like, wow. Like, really? Because you're a couple of billion of us are gonna go to hell. Like, how does that work? So like, we're doing good work in the world, and I'm gonna, God willing, live 120 years, and my Rebbe lived 90 years, and blah, 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 and we all did all this great work in the world, and so, but we didn't accept Jesus as the only begotten Son of God, and we didn't come to Christ through, to God through Christ. So, how does that work? And he's like, he's like, I can explain it to you, and I'm like, I just don't understand. Like, so God, I was brought up in a Jewish family, and so what about I'm lucky enough because I met you, because maybe I have a chance of being saved. But what about all those thousands of people who have never met you? Like, how does that work for them? And he's like, well, that's why we're evangelical. I said, but you're not going to reach them. Like, how does that work? You gotta. So it's just like, it's the same thing with ultra-Orthodox Jews, like in terms of like, and these structures of consciousness that are not, in my opinion, like they're not, it is a zero-sum game. And that's exactly what comes out of when these things happen, is that those on the right will say, you see, we can't trust the Arabs. We can't trust them. Kahana was right. One guy wrote on my Facebook page, Mayor Kahana was right, and we should get rid of all of them. We should kick them out, let them go somewhere else. And then there are Muslim people who say, it's in response to, you see what's happening, they kill this person, they kill that person, and these groups with these mythic structures just fight over pointing the innate, they pull the innate card. It's innate. It's embedded, it's in the, and cultural determinism is equally, it's almost as bad as religious determinism. Saying that just because it's in the myth, it has to be that way is definitely much more rationally egregious. But saying that it's in the culture is another cop-out, because cultures change. They have to change. So, getting back to Lauren's question about parenting, about Rebecca and her role, and this is the way it's always been, and I think that until we stop done. Done. Put a period on that. Yeah, I think Abe had his hand up and then Lou.
I feel like a little kid in school, like raising my hand in the back of the class.
That's Abe over there, everybody. My dear friend Abe.
I was gonna, I just somehow want to tie a number of things together. It's such an important discussion. There's so much going on, and the shit's flying everywhere. And just like picking up on what you were saying.
Alina, yeah.
Because you were trying, I think, to talk about how do you confront and meet the shadow on this personal level, right? To kind of then grip this part that is, if it's not gripped, it gets projected out, like the war within and the war within. So that's one really big piece. So I'm going to just mention a couple names. One is Wilhelm Reich. Okay, so Reich talked about in the book, because there's a personal, and then there's the group. There's this group thing that goes on in terms of group identity. Not just me, you, but us, them. And so what Reich says is, he wrote this in 1932 in German. Okay, and in the preface, if you ever get a chance to read it, he goes.
You didn't say the name of the book, though.
Yeah. The Mass Psychology of Fascism. Okay. This is he's just another Jew, writing in 1932, and who was a student of Freud's and was a Marxist. And he was the first guy to really say it's the body, it's the energy in the body, and he put together all these things. Okay. So he says it's not about a time or place, but it's about a character structure. Okay. So the character structure is the authoritarian character structure. If you take the authoritarian character structure, which is rigid, and it says, this is right, this is not right, this is absolute, and this is you know, right, wrong, etc. This is me, that is everybody else. And if you're not in agreement with me, then either I have to eliminate you, or I have to convert you, right? I have to make you like me. So now that's, I think, at an essence of all of these authoritarian father structures, whether it's in Judaism or it's in Christianity and all these other things. It says, this is me. So if there's an other that has a different identity, a different hero, so then there's this guy Becker, Ernst Becker, who wrote The Denial of Death, which I really recommend everybody get a chance to look at. And what he talks about is hero systems, that everybody needs a hero system or a cultural hero system that says, I have a road to immortality, and if my identity, group identity, personal identity, is tied into it,
Yeah.
then another group's hero system, immortality structure is a threat to my immortality structure. So let's say in the Hiram, in the Noble Sanctuary, the Muslims feel that if someone else comes, it's a contamination, and they feel such a huge threat. And this gets back to boundary, no boundary, overbound, underbound. So they're overbound, and then they're underbound, and they feel like they're going to be completely contaminated, and their whole sense of self and identity is destroyed. And I think that's
So coming back, I want to take off on what Abe was teaching, and say that there is no greater accomplishment within the Kabbalah than being able to find all of these energies within yourself, right? Even in more later Kabbalah, even finding, right, what you said, Esav, which is usually Klippa. Esav is usually seen as the Klippa, the shell, Tuma, impurity. But in later Kabbalah, in the desire to be more holistic, was to recognize that Esav lives in me too, right? And that if I can't find Esav in me, right, then I can't lift it up. So there is the movement in Kabbalah, and again, I want to come back to Moshe Cordovero in the 16th century. But I want to say that there is the movement in Kabbalah to try to move from the destruction of evil to its elevation. The destruction of evil to its elevation. That's the move between old world Kabbalah and then Hasidut. Hasidut didn't want to destroy evil, it wanted to transform and transmute it. There is this notion that there is evil that is so profoundly distorted that one can't really work with it. That's found in the Kabbalah. But our work is really to elevate that which is dark, right, to illuminate it. Now, I just want to say something blasphemous here, which is, I'm just being honest, and I know this is being videotaped, but I don't know. I mean, the first thing that I thought about, and I think a lot of people might have thought about this, was when I heard the news yesterday, I thought about Baruch Goldstein. I thought about what happened in the Purim massacre years ago, when a Jew went into Marat HaMachpelah, into the cave of the patriarchs and matriarchs, and murdered 29 Muslims when they were praying. And I thought to myself, for those who were saying it's us against them, I wasn't condoning this, and I still won't condone it. But I won't allow my intense rejection and condemnation and disgust with this act to cloud and to obfuscate the vision that these two terrorists who did something monstrous, like a couple of days before they did it, were just two fathers of young kids. And I don't know what happened. And I refuse to abdicate that something, that it wasn't a pathology. It's something distorted in their thinking, distorted in their sense, that there's something grossly inhumane that happened, but also something altogether unfortunately human in the way that they were transformed from two people who worked across the street from this yeshiva into this other thing. And I think that, and I will say this, is that the desire for revenge is human. The desire for revenge is human. The desire to lash out is human. The desire to take my pain and inflict it on someone else is human. And the desire for retributive justice is also human. It's absolutely human. It just, if we want more, right, we always have a choice. If we want more death, if we want to continue the cycle, then we can just play along with the cause and effect, right? What happened, right? And then the next cycle, and the next cycle, and there won't, you know, the road to more and more violence is paved with, what do you mean? This is just what I'm supposed to do next. And that brings us right now into Bina, and I'll take your comment, and then I'll bring us into Bina. Bina is, if Keter is the highest, most refined of the Sfirot, Chokhmah is what we said yesterday. The energy of Chokhmah is moving in both directions. It's a point of intuition. But Bina is the energy of returning. So let me ask you a question. So what's Bina? Bina is called the supernal mother. Bina is called the great mother, the Bina. Right? It is associated with God bless you, with Jubilee year, with Yovel. Bina means to understand, right? It's associated with words and language. The Bina mind is the mind that is receptive to the breaking of a cycle, and that gets back up on Bina mind is the interruption of a pattern. Bina mind is the returning to a primal place where everything is possible, where one has radical free choice. Bina mind is extricating oneself from any given causal chain that seems like everything must be as it is. That's Bina. Bina is freedom in the Kabbalah. Right? To meditate on Bina is to meditate on your own radical freedom. The freedom to say that I am not, there is no compulsion, there is no factor, whether it is nature or nurture, that is compelling me at any given moment to have to be exactly as I was. That's what Bina is. Bina is a fancy term for self-transformation and transformation itself. Which is why we have to reject the seeming simple understanding of the myth of Jacob and Esau, because it would seem that neither one of them had a choice about who they were going to become. It seems like the whole purpose of that story is actually to say destiny is stronger than action in some way. At least the beginning of the story. And it may be Jacob, in a sense, right? Maybe in some way Jacob's stealing the birthright is a way of saying that you can outsmart destiny. With your creativity, your ingenuity, your craftiness, right? You don't have to be, right? Jacob is trying on different clothing and trying to see if he can be more like the one who's deserving of blessing. So there's no more important religious doctrine than the doctrine that you are free. That's the most important religious doctrine, period. Does that make sense? No, I'm not, no. Does that make sense? Why am I saying that? David, why do I say that?
I just feel it.
You feel it. What does it mean you feel it? What do you feel? You feel it in your heart? What are you free? What does that mean? You're free to be you and free to be me? What does it mean? What does it mean when religious leaders, Moses, who says, Bacharta b'chayim, you can choose life. Moses, who says you can return from any land that you've been dispersed to, and uses the word tshuva, that you can return. The word bina, which is mother. What does it mean that when religions come along and say you're free? Eli, what does it mean you're free?
You have a choice.
You have a choice? What do you mean you have a choice?
How to think, how to act,
How to perceive.
how to perceive.
How to perceive. So perception is in your hands.
Bro, I mean, if you have choices, then you make better choices. And there's always a choice, so you make
So that one choice, one slight shifting of an angle on a causal vector, like one small movement to the right, to the left, 1 degree, will now borrow from the law of of causal determinism and set a new course. In other words, if you believe in determinism, like one effect follows a cause, right? You do one thing, you plant a seed, it'll bring forth fruit, whatever it is. But if you also believe in radical freedom means that even if, right, even if there are so many things that you have no choice over, ultimately though, you have the choice to shift slightly. And in shifting slightly, you change the complete trajectory of a given pattern, of a given moment. Completely. For good, and maybe sometimes not for good. You know, this young Druzy soldier, this police officer, this hero yesterday, do people know about him? Is he done? He's 30 years old. He married, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago he married his wife. And 4 months ago he had a baby girl. And yesterday at 7 o'clock, he got the call that there was something happening in that shul in Har Nof, in that synagogue. And he went. He made a decision. He was free to go. He could have gone in a different direction. He was free to decide whether to walk into that shul or not. I know it's horrible to think about. But he became a hero in that moment. He chose to go protect those people. And I want to say that I also say that that's ultimately why because we believe in freedom, we can ultimately blame those terrorists. If we didn't believe in freedom, then we couldn't blame the terrorists. We could just say, oh, what do you mean? They're just a bundle of cultural conditions and religious conditions and so many different things. But no, we said that ultimately they could have chosen not to do that. They could have, and they didn't. So Bina means that what was doesn't have to be what is or will be. That's what Bina means. Bina means that what was doesn't have to be what is and what will be. Bina is the ultimate affirmation of the triumph of human will over fate. And the Ramak says that you should spend a large part of your day thinking about returning. I keep thinking, there's a thing that's out now that works with the Apple operating system called Tiles. Everybody see these things? They're kind of like, you've seen Tiles, right? I bought a couple of these.
Yep.
They're like this big. It's like literally a little tile with a little circle for like a key. And you can put them onto various things that you lose frequently, like keys, my glasses, and guess what? It has a tracking system so that if you lose it, or you know where it is, it'll show up on your phone. Take a little tile with a tracker on it, It's crazy. So I wish that I had tiles for my soul. So like when I get lost, I get fablungin. I could have like a little thing that be like, it'll pop up and be like, well, you are way out. Why not? Like there are religious practices are tiles for the lost soul. Right?
Don't we have, though, we just don't.
We do.
Like you said, it's
Yeah.
so obvious, we're not looking at what's so, we have tiles, we're just not listening.
We don't hear them, or the truth is,
We know when we're going down the wrong road.
I know, we do know.
The beeper goes off.
And we have to check in though, because if we don't check in, we
Well,
can
like you
go,
said, we gotta start listening with integrity.
we gotta listen. And that's what Bina is always connected to. Bina is always connected in Judaism with hearing, with listening. If you listen.
You have to turn it on though, the kids.
Tile's always
That's
on.
the key.
Tile is always on.
You have to
just
look
have to
for
have the
it.
operating system.
The phone's gotta be on.
You have to have the willingness to look for it.
First of all, you have to know that it's lost. The Baal Shem Tov said, when I say the Baal Shem Tov, people know who the Baal Shem Tov is?
Yeah.
Founder of the Hasidic movement, a great saint, a great avatar. He was really an enlightened being. And the Baal Shem Tov said that the greatest curse in the Torah is when God says that on that day, I will hide, I will certainly hide. A double hiding will take place, a double concealment. A double concealment. It's in one of the curses in the Bible. God says, on that day, you will be cursed, and I will doubly hide my face. Haster astir panai. The Baal Shem Tov said, you know what the worst thing is? If you're playing a game of hide and seek with a kid, and he said, okay, now it's my turn to go hide. And you go and hide, and you wait 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour, and you're thinking, what happened? I said, I'm gonna go hide. You gotta come get me. And then you come out, you see like the kid, playing a video game, whatever. And the kid says, he said, well, what's going on? We're playing hide and seek, and the kid says, oh, I didn't even know you were hiding, I forgot. And the Baal Shem Tov said, it's one thing when you're hiding and someone's looking for you and they can't find you, right? But it's another thing, he says, when you're hiding and no one's even looking for you. He said, that's the curse that God said. There'll come a time, he said, when nobody's going to even look. It's like, you won't even know you're lost. Yeah. Like, I'll tell you something, check. Everything is on recording now, so I don't care, what do I care? So, seriously, who cares? I'm a spiritual gangster. I went to like an event last night, and it was at the Waldorf. And it was with a lot of people from a world that I'm not usually in. Let's put it that way. Returning home, but it's a sense of I'm lost and I have to come back. Okay, I got lost, I'm coming back. I got lost, I'm coming back. So we train the soul, but here's the thing: is that the soul has to know where it's home, so that it knows when it's lost. If you never tasted home, if you never tasted what it feels like to be in a place of spiritual alignment, then you might not feel it when you're out of alignment. Sometimes the worst thing you can do to somebody is actually give them a taste of their freedom and then put them back in prison. Because before they knew they were free, they were like, oh, this is I just grew up in a prison. It's like a friend of mine was talking to me today, and he told me that he worked, as a rabbi, was working with a kid who lost his father when he was 13. And the kid now is like 40. He was working with a kid who lost his father. He's working with an adult who lost his father when he was 13. Now he's 45 years old, let's say 46. And my rabbi friend said that when he talks to this person and asks them about what his image of that loss is, he gave him a triptych. He gave him like 3 images. And the image that arose for this guy was a tree and a fence, a tree and a fence that are so close together that the tree now is completely grown through the fence. And he said, it's 3 images for me, 3 questions. Like the fence as initially blocking the growth of the tree. That was stage 1. And then stage 2, he said, when I lost my father, was that the fence was supporting like the growth of the tree and giving it a sense of a boundary and helping it grow. So it didn't feel as constricting. And then ultimately he said the tree and the fence are interwoven together. They're just completely woven together. The tree and the metal are interwoven, and he doesn't know where the aliveness is and where the fence is. And if someone grows up and they never have that fence, right? They never have that loss. They have a sense of what that is. If you grow up in a world where all you have is fence, giving someone a taste of freedom can be extremely important for them, the sense of aliveness that they can then yearn for. But it can also be extremely debilitating to go back into that world where you don't have that freedom. But ultimately, Bina doesn't work if we don't have home base. If we don't have a decent, like an innate sense or some experience of that freedom that we can return to, so that we know when we're off, right? Now, I'm going to say that all right, I'm done. I mean, there's so much more to say. It's like how can I talk about that place that a lot of us would hear for the prayer service, that place that you feel where you feel rooted, you feel connected, right? But if you don't have larger circles, if we don't live within much larger, broader circles of awareness and broader circles of development, then we really don't know if our little home is, we don't know how developed our home is, how located it is. We can be lost at home. So, if you ask me, and I'm going to be very judgmental now, if you ask me if someone who believes that Christ will come one day and judge me, David Engel,